Silas Boone had been stared at in 20 towns. In some places, women smiled from hotel balconies. In others, they stepped into the street just to make him lift his eyes. He always did the same thing. He touched the brim of his hat, gave them one polite look, and kept riding. Because Silas Boone did not belong anywhere. Not in Abilene, not in Laramie, not in the mining camps north of Silver City, and certainly not in a little sunburned place called Calico Bend. He rode in near sundown, with trail dust on his coat and no plan beyond coffee grain and a bed that did not move beneath him. The whole town noticed him before his horse reached the well. 3 young women near the boarding house turned first. One of them smiled like she already knew the ending of the story. Silas tipped his hat. Then he rode past. A piano rattled inside the saloon. Men laughed too loudly under the porch. A girl in a blue ribbon leaned against a post and watched him like he was something brought in by the wind. Silas passed her too. That was how he lived. Always courteous, always distant, always gone before anyone could ask him to stay. Then he heard a woman's voice from inside Garrett's dry goods. Not loud, not sweet, not trying to be heard. Just calm enough to stop a room. Short measure is still short, Mr. Pike. Silas turned his head. Behind the counter stood a woman in a plain brown calico dress, one hand resting on a brass scale, the other holding a scoop of flour. A ranch hand twice her size stood on the other side of the counter, red-faced and annoyed. She did not flinch. She did not smile. She did not look toward Silas. She simply moved the little weight on the scale, waited for the balance arm to settle and said, "You paid for 10 pounds. You will leave with 10 pounds. That was all. No performance, no fluttering lashes, no careful glance toward the stranger in the doorway. And for the first time in years, Silas Boone stopped walking. The ranch hand muttered something under his breath, took the flour, and left. The woman wiped the counter once with a folded cloth. Only then did she look up. Her eyes met Silas's. There was no surprise in them, no admiration, no question meant to pull his story out of him. Just a steady look. "Can I help you?" Silas had crossed deserts without losing words. But standing in that quiet store, with a woman who had not tried to notice him at all, he nearly forgot why he had come in. "Coffee," he said. She reached beneath the counter. "Ground or beans?" "Beans." "How much?" Silas looked at the shelves as if the answer might be written there. "A pound." She measured it cleanly, tied the paper with string, and placed it in front of him. No extra talk, no warm smile, no attempt to keep him there. Silas paid. She counted the coins, slid one back across the counter, and said, "You gave me too much." He looked at the coin. Most storekeepers on the trail would have kept it. She had not even hesitated. "What is your name?" he asked, a small pause. "Lena Mercer." Then she looked past him to the next customer. The moment was over, but Silas carried it with him all the way across the street. That night, he rented the back room of the livery and laid his bedroll on the floor. His horse was fed. His saddle was dry. His route east was clear. By habit, he should have left before dawn. But when the sun came up, Silas Boone was still in Calico Bend. He sat on a crate outside the livery with a tin cup of coffee cooling in his hand. Across the street, Garrett's Dry Goods opened its shutters. Lena Mercer stepped onto the porch, swept dust from the boards, and went back inside without looking around. Silas told himself he needed lamp wicks. He did not. He told himself a man on the trail should never ride without spare matches. He had 3 boxes already. 10 minutes later, the bell above the dry goods door rang again. Lena was arranging tins of peaches on a shelf. "Morning," she said. "Morning." She looked at him for 1 second longer than a storekeeper needed to. "More coffee?" Silas glanced at the shelf in front of him. It was buttons. Matches, he said. Her mouth moved like she almost smiled. Other side, he found them eventually. Then he found lamp wicks, then boot grease, then a needle packet he had no use for. By the time he reached the counter, Lena had stacked the items without comment. "Traveling far?" she asked. It was the first question she had offered him. Silas should have had an easy answer. He always had an easy answer. "Far enough," he said. Lena tied the string around the package. "That sounds like a man who has stopped naming places." Silas looked at her. Most people ask where he came from, where he was going, whether he had fought, whether he had money, whether he had a wife buried somewhere. Lena asked none of that. She noticed the one thing he had not noticed about himself. He no longer spoke of destinations, only distance. She handed him the package. "Anything else?" Silas almost said no. Instead he said, "Not today." "Then I suppose I'll see you tomorrow." It was not flirtation. It was not an invitation. It was the kind of sentence a woman says when she has already measured a man and found him predictable. Silas stepped back into the sun carrying 4 things he did not need, and for reasons he could not explain. He was not irritated. He was curious. For 3 days he made excuses. A strap needed mending. A tin cup needed replacing. A shirt button had allegedly betrayed him, though the shirt had no missing button at all. Each visit lasted a little longer. Lena never rushed him out. She never pulled him in. She treated him like weather passing through town. Useful, perhaps. Interesting, perhaps. But nothing to rearrange a life around. That should have made Silas leave. Instead, it made him stay. On the 4th afternoon, Calico Bend grew loud. A freight wagon broke an axle in front of the store, spilling sacks of cornmeal into the dirt. Men gathered, offering opinions. No one offered hands. Lena came out, looked at the wheel, looked at the sacks, and said, "Move the load first, talk after." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Silas put down his coffee. He lifted the first sack. The others followed because it is hard for idle men to stay idle when one quiet person begins doing the work. Within half an hour, the load was stacked under the awning. The broken wheel was braced, and the wagon driver was thanking everyone who had suddenly discovered his strength. Lena stood at the edge of the porch, sleeves rolled to her elbows, dust on her cheek. Silas looked at her hands. Small hands, chapped knuckles, a thin scar across one finger. Not the hands of a woman waiting to be rescued, the hands of someone who had already rebuilt something. That evening clouds came over the ridge. The air turned green-gray. The horses went restless in their stalls. By supper, rain hammered the town hard enough to drive everyone indoors. Silas was in the dry goods store when the storm broke. So were 6 other people who had taken shelter there. The roof leaked in 2 places. A little boy cried when thunder cracked above the street. An old woman crossed herself and whispered that she hated summer storms. Lena set buckets beneath the leaks, handed the boy a peppermint, and told the old woman, "It will spend itself faster if we let it speak." Then she kept working. Silas watched her move through the store. Calm, measured, never wasted. But when she reached the back shelf, a gust shoved rain through a loose window and knocked a small wooden box onto the floor. Paper spilled out. Lena froze. It lasted less than a second. But Silas saw it. Her face changed before she could stop it. Not fear exactly. Memory. The kind that catches a person by the throat. She crouched quickly and gathered the papers before anyone else could read them. Silas looked away. That was the first decent thing he knew to do. A few minutes later, Orrin Pike pushed through the door, soaked through and sour-faced. He was the ranch hand from the first night. and he carried resentment like a loaded pistol. "That old account of Garrett's still sits unpaid," he said, shaking rain from his hat. "Storm takes the roof, maybe the bank takes the store." The room went quiet. Lena placed the wooden box beneath the counter. "Mr. Pike, if you came in for dry tobacco, I can sell it to you. If you came in to enjoy yourself, do it somewhere else." A few people looked down to hide their smiles. Pike's jaw tightened. Brave talk for a woman standing behind another man's counter. Lena did not move. "It is my counter until the note says otherwise." That was the first time Silas heard the weight beneath her voice. Not anger, a line in the ground. Pike stared at her, then at Silas, then back at the room full of witnesses. He took his tobacco and left. The storm swallowed the sound of his boots. For a while nobody spoke. Then the old woman asked for thread. The boy asked for another peppermint. The store breathed again. But Silas no longer saw Lena as quiet. He saw the effort behind the quiet. He saw a woman holding a whole life steady with both hands, while everyone mistook stillness for ease. Later, when the rain softened and the customers left one by one, Silas remained near the door. Lena was wiping water from the counter. "You handled him well," he said. She did not look up. "I handle him often." "Why does he think the store is his business?" Her cloth stopped. For a moment Silas thought she would give the same kind of answer he gave when people asked about the road. Thin, closed, far enough. But Lena surprised him. "I came here with a trunk, $22, and a letter saying Mr. Garrett needed help at the store." She folded the cloth. "He died 6 months later." The note stayed. So did the men who thought a woman could not read numbers unless they were written for her. Silas waited. Lena looked toward the rain-dark window. "Before that, I lived in a house where every choice had already been made for me. Who I would marry, what I would say, how soft I would keep my voice." Her eyes returned to him. "So I left." The word was simple, but it did not sound simple. It sounded like a door closing behind her with no promise that another would open. Silas understood more than he wanted to. "I left too," he said. Lena gave him a careful look. "From what?" He almost smiled. The answer should have been a town, a woman, a failed claim, a grave. But none of those were true enough. "From being expected," he said. The rain ticked softly in the buckets. Lena nodded once, as if that was the first honest thing he had said since arriving. "That can feel like freedom," she said. Silas looked at the packed shelves, the wet floor, the little brass scale on the counter. And after a while, she wrung out the cloth. After a while, it can start to look like hiding. The next morning, Calico Bend shone under a clean blue sky. Every puddle held a piece of sun. Silas saddled his horse before breakfast. He did it out of habit. Blanket, saddle, cinch, bedroll, rifle scabbard. The familiar order usually settled him. This time each motion felt like a question he did not want to answer. The road east ran open beyond the last cottonwood. Nothing blocked it. No debt. No promise. No hand on his sleeve. He could leave in 5 minutes, and by noon Calico Bend would become another name he did not use. Then the dry goods door opened. Lena stepped out with a broom. She saw the saddle, the tied bedroll. The horse turned toward the road. Her face did not fall. That might have been easier. She simply leaned the broom against the porch rail and said, "Leaving?" Silas rested one hand on the saddle horn. "I was." Lena waited. He had never hated silence before. Silence had been his shelter, his room, his weapon. But with Lena, silence did not protect him. It asked him to tell the truth. Silas looked toward the road. "I don't know why I keep moving," he said. "I used to think there was a reason. Work, weather, trouble, bad luck." He swallowed. "But most days now I think I leave before any place has time to matter." Lena stood very still. The town moved behind her. A hammer rang at the blacksmith's. Someone laughed outside the saloon. A wagon rolled past, splashing through a shallow puddle. Life went on. For once, Silas did not move with it. Lena stepped down from the porch. Places don't matter by themselves, she said. People make them heavy. Silas looked at her. And if a man has spent years staying light, then he has to decide whether light is the same as free. No one had ever said it that plainly. Not because they were cruel, because they had not looked close enough. Lena had. She had seen the empty saddlebag beneath the trail dust, the way he named distance instead of destinations, the way he watched a room from the edge of it, ready to vanish before anyone could count on him. Silas untied the bedroll. He carried it back into the livery. When he returned, Lena was still on the porch. She said nothing. That was another thing he liked about her. She never spent words just to prove a moment had happened. By noon, Silas was helping the wagon driver finish the axle properly. By evening, he had repaired the loose window in the back of the dry goods store. The next day, he rode out to the old mill and brought back boards for the roof. The day after that, he stood beside Lena when the banker came to discuss the note. He did not speak for her. He did not need to. He stood there because sometimes standing beside someone says more than taking over ever could. Lena read the numbers. The banker listened, and Orrin Pike, watching from the porch rail, found no easy opening. Weeks passed. Calico Bend began to change around Silas in small, stubborn ways. Men who once nodded and let him pass began calling him by name. Children asked if his horse would bite. The blacksmith trusted him with a broken hinge. The old woman from the storm saved him a slice of pear cake. And each morning when the shutters opened at Garrett's Dry Goods, Silas found himself looking toward that porch. Not because he was trapped, because for the first time he wanted to know what the day would become if he stayed long enough to see it. One evening, the sky turned the same orange gold it had been when he first arrived. Silas stood outside the store, holding a crate while Lena checked the delivery list. "You're still here," she said. He smiled a little. "You keep saying that like you're surprised." "I am." "Why?" Lena looked up from the paper. "Men like you usually like the idea of being missed more than the work of being known." Silas felt that line go through him clean. A month earlier he might have laughed and left town before morning. Now he only nodded. "Maybe I got tired of being easy to miss." Lena studied him. Then very slowly she smiled. Not the smile of a woman trying to catch a man. The smile of a woman watching someone finally set down a weight he had pretended was nothing. Silas looked past her to the road. It was still there, dusty, open, patient. For years, that road had felt like the only honest thing in his life. It never asked questions, never remembered promises, never held him to yesterday. But now he understood something he had been too restless to see. A road can carry a man away from pain. It cannot tell him where he belongs. Silas turned from the road and lifted the crate inside. Lena followed with the ledger under her arm. Behind them, the dry goods bell rang once, then settled into silence. The women of Calico Bend had noticed Silas Boone the moment he arrived. But the one who changed him was the woman who had not tried to notice him at all. And for the first time in his life, the road was not calling him. It was waiting, and Silas Boone let it wait.